The reason for the work session is to discuss the ordinance concerning the fire protection code of ordinances for fire prevention and protection. Naturally, after reading this, first question comes to my mind is, do we enforce it? And that's going to be a problem. The other thing is, if we're adopting a portion of the ordinance or the fire code, is that going to stand? I mean, I don't know. And we brought this off as our ISO rating and trying to work this out, and they asked if we had an ordinance, and we didn't at this time. But again, there's several questions in here, and that's the reason I wanted the two of you to talk to us and tell us the parking situation. If we block off that area where the field house is, and block off that lane, we're taking 25% of their parking in school. Creates another problem. There's several issues I think we just need to talk about. Okay, Jeff, tell us all about it.
Well, I guess the main issue to discuss at first was the ordinance on parking and open burns. That's what it was. I talked to the assistant state fire marshal this morning and told him a little bit about what was going on, invited him to come up. He said he would. But he brought something to my attention. We fall under the codes that the state of Alabama has now, period. There's no question. We're under. The kicker to it is the ability to enforce them. Now, do we have the ability to enforce them? No, because we don't have them adopted. I can go out, Tommy can go out, we can do inspections, we can set fire lanes, we can do all that stuff. And I can look at them and go, this is what you need to do. But we do an inspection, we give them 15 to 30 days to correct the violations that they have. At the end of 30 days, if I go back and they haven't corrected them, they just haven't corrected them. There's nothing I can do. I can turn around and call the state. When they get a chance to be able to send somebody up here, then something can be done. But as it stands right now, we don't have a leg to stand on.
So you're saying the state fire marshal's office can only correct the state code problems if it falls under their guidelines? We'd have to adopt our own similar,
You have to adopt what they have.
adopt what they have or our own.
You can make it an ordinance, but the key to the ordinance is if they change their codes and they're more stringent than what the ordinance says, then our ordinance is no good.
So you're almost saying, suggesting adopt, do an ordinance or a resolution adopting the state fire codes where you can't, where y'all two can enforce it.
We can enforce them in the police department.
And if it changes, we'll change with it.
And this is part of the problem. Are we gonna be able to enforce this?
We're
Given 3
Jonathan,
days.
Jeff just said we're under it. We don't have to adopt it. We're under it.
You're liable if you don't.
We're under it. What I'm trying to say is we're supposed, we just don't have an enforcement arm. We haven't adopted it so they can enforce it.
Right. The state comes in and they're the ones that can enforce it. The only thing we can do is say, it's my recommendation. I mean, if I go to one of the, let's just say we go to the hospital or a nursing home or another business around here, and there are 30 different violations, and they all fall under life safety. If 30 days they don't fix those, they just don't fix them. There's nothing I can do about it.
Can you at that time report that violation to the state?
I can, but it may be another 30 days before they get up here.
Hey Jeff, let me ask you one other question. I don't want to clear it. I live in Haleyville, but I want to know, does Hamilton, does Winfield, does Phil Campbell, does Hackleburg, does all these other towns, are they under this same gun?
Phil
You say
Campbell
we're under?
has no.
I think what he's referring to is the state code in the complete, right?
Right,
That they
yeah.
follow.
Yeah.
Yes, but the thing about this is they don't have, we're one of the towns that has a fire marshal's office, so to speak. So we do have the ability to enforce these codes if they're passed. Phil Campbell, Hackleburg, smaller places like that, no, they don't, because they have no full-time people, and they have nobody that they have designated as a fire marshal.
Do we wanna get in the enforcement business? I mean, if we can ultimately get the state to come in, even if it takes 30 days, if we're already under this,
There's
we already fall under these guidelines
Why?
for the
There's
state, why do we
66
want to be in
What happened
enforcement?
last time the state come in and started doing these restaurants, jails and stuff?
It's the same thing's gonna happen if y'all do it. If we adopt this today,
At
you
least-
don't go up there and make them put that fire exit in, you're just as guilty as they are for not doing it, not following the code.
They can shut them down,
So-
Wouldn't that be?
if we don't have the ability to enforce it.
If we voted in, I'm saying
If you
you're,
vote the code.
it's calling the state in or having y'all come in, the same thing's gonna happen. If we adopt this whole code, then you have to abide by it.
If
as
I-
fire marshal, don't you?
If we adopt the code, alright, and say we go in and find a place that's within violation. I'm not gonna call any places right now, or towns, but there's one currently that a hotel chain came in. And it didn't pass code. Their city fire marshal went in because they had the code adopted and closed the place down, chained the doors closed. It's no longer open. The owner goes back, cuts the locks off, reopens it. He goes back, he chains it, he locks it again. He comes back, he cuts them open, he's back in business, so he thinks. So then the state comes up and anybody that was affiliated with running the place are now sitting in jail. So, once we go to the fullest extent that we can go, then the state will come in and stand with y'all and us to enforce what needs to be done. They can carry it a little further than we can. So,
At the end of the day, though, we're already under this.
Let me say something, let me clarify something. We're talking about two different things. This thing you got from Trussville is a fire prevention ordinance. The other is a codes, which Alabama, Scottsboro has theirs set up, adopted to adopt whatever the state's got. Our building codes is the 1997 Southern Building Codes. When Walmart called and asked me what required, I said, do whatever the state requires. Because that's,
They
I'm not
had to
gonna,
meet both codes on Walmart. They had to meet the 1991 code and the current code.
well, the current code exceeds the 97
91.
or 91, whatever. So I told them just do whatever the state recommends now. So Scottsboro has adopted it a way that the state gets it, and they got it.
The one problem that I have is Hamilton went ahead and adopted that code. Now, that code calls for several things. Sprinkler systems in residential, calls for a specific type of shingle to be used. And they've been fighting this now for 2 years, trying to figure out what to do.
The state
Exempted.
exempted residential. You see what I'm saying? The state fire marshal.
Why are they having requirements on what that?
If I understood him correctly, if we adopt the codes, we have the ability to exempt things that are not going to pertain to heat. If I understood him correctly, and that's why I've asked him to come up, because they deal with this day in, day out, 365 days a year. They have people that sit down and go over it before the codes are even adopted, read it, attorneys look at it, they go the whole 9 yards with it. They know exactly what it is that you can and what you can't do, what the repercussions are for not doing it, and what can be benefits for doing it.
This code that we're talking about adopting, are we wanting to adopt this code strictly for the purpose of having in-house enforcement? Yes or no?
We're wanting to adopt this code for the benefits of the city, because your industrial places look at these things before they come in.
That's what I know, but.
Insurance companies,
This
look at it.
code here, this ordinance here that y'all got,
It's just a piece.
This is just fire prevention.
Yeah, it's
fire
just a,
prevention.
Yeah, let's not even talk about this. Let's talk about this state code that we're already under, that y'all are talking about us adopting.
It was 500 pages on.
Right. That big code. If we adopt that, we're just adopting that strictly for the purposes of us being able to have in-house enforcement to enforce that code. Is that the gist of it?
You don't adopt it, you're already under it.
No, you
No,
have,
no.
no. you-
What
you
I'm
don't.
saying is, I'm just being sure I understand it correctly. We adopt that code for the purposes of being able to enforce it here instead of depending on the state enforcement.
Right, if you adopt it, then we have the ability to enforce it.
But actually, it's here anyway, but we have to get state to deal with it.
You have 28 state fire marshals and 67 counties. Now, if you'll go on their website and take a look at just their investigations alone for 1 year's time, it's an unreal amount.
I'm just not satisfied that we need to be in the enforcement business on that thing. That's my take, and I don't, and I ain't read
Well,
that
that's-
500 pages yet either. I've touched a
That's
few
why-
spots, and I
that's
just
why-
never hear, but
That's why I've asked them, the assistant state fire marshal, to come up and discuss the ins and outs with us on this. I think we talked about the next council.
Good after next
Does
council.
Tommy, have the authority to shut a plant down without okay?
Y'all can't pay it.
Back when the city went wet, y'all did the 2003 Life Safety Code 101. For us to start, that's when the fire marshals come in. Y'all told me to start enforcing that. So these restaurants have been, or anybody coming in to sell alcohol, have been meeting that code. Have y'all had any problem with that?
As far as needing, a little back, the place that just went down there, somebody said something about it, but they fixed it. I mean, wasn't no problem, whatever you told them to do, really had any problem.
Royce, on his donut shop,
Yeah. They broke my back, I'm talking about, though, and I didn't tell you about
You're
it.
looking,
You see what I'm
you were
saying?
talking about getting us,
No,
you know,
we didn't have a
we would
problem.
like to
did
get
what
a
they
hotel
asked-
chain in.
I did what they asked me to do, and
correct?
they
Yeah.
came in and
Yeah.
as far
They're
as the
forced to
R
follow
lanes,
this if it's adopted.
Right now, they can choose to or not to.
Well, they can, but
They take their chances.
I'm not gonna say that it's gonna work.
They take their
But
chances.
you know, the thing about what I was trying to say was we started discussing this thing about our ISO rating, okay? And really hadn't heard much about that because what I read about it here was a lot of enforcement, roofing fire hydrants, and a lot of parking space in this thing. The other thing I haven't read, it's a lot, somebody said, somebody might explain it to me or didn't want to, 500 pages I really want, I didn't want 500 pages, didn't really think I'd look through all of it. But what I don't want to do, and I don't think anybody up here wants to do, we don't want to hinder the fire department or our ISO code, but we also don't want to put a burden on our residents and on our businesses that we can't bear. If we adopt something that you're legally obligated to enforce, and then you don't enforce it, what happens?
Now, we're held liable.
You're held personally liable.
We-
So we're back to a point here, if we adopt this thing, and somebody down the road here has got something out of the way, that's, y'all got to enforce it.
The old-
Yeah, this is
the
where
old-
Bud was talking about, we're gonna get into enforcing all this stuff. Our police officers are already tied up more than they
Now,
have.
the old buildings and stuff that we currently have in town,
Our grandfather.
or should be, if I understood it correctly, should be grandfathered into the point to where major changes to the places won't take place. New things that are coming in. You mentioned residential. We don't want the residential business.
states exempt
The
residential.
state fire marshal's office doesn't even handle residential. They have no part of it. Once you get into residential, you're-
International Building Code.
Mhm. there's a different,
Hamilton,
yeah.
there's a definite thing, there's several things in there very definite.
Right.
And they've been fighting this for 2 years.
Right.
It didn't
That's-
have
see,
nothing to
that's
do
the
with fire
question.
prevention. It was a building
That
code.
would be totally different from
But what I'm saying is,
fire
it's
code
not
and
there
building
before they
code.
realize.
And see, that's the thing that I'm trying, that's the reason why I'm getting Scott Pilgrim from
More input,
Montgomery to
yeah.
come up here, because, whatever that's adopted is the law, and there's no way around it. As far as, my question to him is what all can we do for this city to be able to, can we exempt things that really aren't gonna pertain to us? Or, you know, are we able to do all those things? And that's some of the questions I know that y'all had, and some of the questions that I had as well, and Tommy did too. And that's the things we're trying to get down to the bottom of is, you know, how much is this gonna benefit us in the long run? You know, life safety, I'm in the life safety business. You know, life safety is my job. That's what I, you know, deal with every single day of my life. And that's what's most important to me, and I know it's important to y'all because everybody has kids, grandkids that live here, or they're gonna live here and go to school here. And, you know, I think it's something that we need to really look into to the point of considering adopting these things, but only after we talk to the state fire marshal's office to see what avenues that we can take or we can't take. Because they're the ones that know this inside and out. They know it better than I do because they've been dealing with it forever. They know it better than Tommy does. They deal with it on a daily basis and on a great big larger scale. So that's why I'm asking them to come up here so that they can answer y'all's questions that y'all have, questions that we have, and to see which road that we do need to take.
Now,
We
get
think
back,
that's the next meeting. We need to wait until the next meeting and then go ahead and meet with the state fire marshal and find out what we need to do. In the meantime, everybody take a look at this and put a question mark or highlight those things we're gonna have questions on.
no, listen right here, y'all got to trust me. The only question y'all have is on the parking fire lanes, right?
Now,
Well,
the
there's several
first,
questions on
the
it.
first one I had is, the fine and then punishment, and then taking it to court and.
What set by
and-
the local city?
That's what y'all would establish.
That,
You see, that's what this says we'll do. You'll do that, you'll fine them $50. If they don't come to court, we'll issue a warrant, we'll bring them to court. There's set out certain things that'll be done to you. When you're gonna set a fire in your backyard, burn your bushes off, 3 days before you set it, you gotta come to the fire marshal and get a written permission to set that burn. Or you can be fined, you know,
now that don't count cookouts. if you're-
well, it says a pit, like a pit fire or something.
Yeah,
Here's a good
the pit
example.
is where-
Fire hydrants
Yeah.
shall be installed at a minimum of every 1,000 feet in the residential area and every 500 feet in the commercial and industrial area. The water supply and pressure shall be sufficient to adequately serve the needs of the fire flow.
I'll agree with
How
that.
many additional fire plugs are we gonna have to purchase to meet that requirement?
This will be from now on, not what already.
I think
If you
that'll
go out
fall
trying to
under
build a new industrial
Yeah.
park, you need
anything
to
as
have,
a fact that that's adopted.
cause that's Rollins, what happens if we got sufficient water flow? You know,
That's the reason why I got this seat over here.
You know,
They in
the-
the business.
y'all are in the water department's in the business of drinkable water.
That's right. They're not
That's
the fire
good.
protection
Right.
business, so when
I-
you start regulating pressures and water flow out
They
here
don't-
at the edge of town, you know,
But-
even if it is a new bill, Tommy, then you start speaking water flow and water pressure, now you've got the water board in the fire protection business, and they're not in the fire protection business.
But I think you should.
where's your water come from? Up in Bear Creek Fire and Water Protection, right, Bear Creek Water and Fire Protection,
But they are fire protection,
that's right,
we're not.
Yeah, we're not, we're separate entities.
well, all I'm
That's
saying,
that's just one of the
but I'm just
hurdles
saying,
I'm seeing.
We're trying,
Right, right.
what we're actually trying to do is say, look, what are we gonna do with this thing? How do we need to do it, and can we enforce what we're doing?
most people,
Can we meet those requirements?
We're
If
saying,
we
how
can't
can
meet
we
the
do it, not how
requirements-
can't we do
Right,
it? We're just
Yeah, we're
asking
saying,
those
how
hard
can-
questions and,
Right.
most
So
people,
we
we
get
do
it.
put it in
you
there,
know.
that, you know, they don't come back and say, you know, we don't know about that, or, you know, we don't have pressure on this plug. I mean, we've got some areas here, and
Yeah.
Drew's aware of it, and Bud's aware of it. Y'all are aware of it now. We got fire plugs that don't have adequate flow.
Well, we got a
Of course,
couple
now
of
we're
big-
looking at $200,000 to try and get that flow.
And again, that's why I called them, because I don't have the answers to all those things. I mean, I just don't.
I just can't see a city of our size, with our means, adopting this code and making all those upgrade changes that appears to need to be made, just in this one section that we're looking at. I just can't see it financially
All
being,
the
and it may
changes.
not be, so that's what I'm saying, by you bringing the guy in, he may say, look, you can work this thing over the next 10 years or 15 years, or just do a plan on it or something. you
There's
know?
no doubt in my mind if a new, let's say, a new industry came in and bought a piece of property and wanted to build a, you know, and I think the city would be well served to provide the infrastructure, the water, whatever, and whatever the new code is, would leave it up to y'all to be sure they get it that way. I don't have any problem with
No,
that, but do I think we need to adopt the code to do that? I don't think we do.
That's what I'm saying in that.
I mean, we let Tommy get these guys straight that come in doing an alcohol deal. We haven't adopted any code. We just said, Tommy, be sure they get this thing.
But if they don't do it,
You know.
there's nothing to do.
What does
We
adopting,
can call the state if they don't do it.
what does adopting this code do for your department or do for the city?
This code
Other
here
than-
you're looking at, it gives us a fire prevention code for the ISO.
What does it do?
That helps her.
What could have been saved, this we lost fire-wise in the past
It just shows the
X amount of
ISO.
years? You know,
What it's gonna help, it's gonna help the city in a whole on an insurance perspective.
guaranteed on ISO or not
It's
guaranteed?
part of it.
Well, that's part of the points. Fire
Could you
prevention,
ask the company or a consulting company that consults ISO and say, hey, here's our current rating, we just got rated. If we would have adopted this, what our rating went to.
But let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. If you had the opportunity to adopt these codes and you choose not to, and then something happens, who's gonna be held liable?
What's it gonna prevent from happening? That's my question. What is it
You're
gonna do
looking
to
at
make?
sprinklers,
Sprinkler.
sprinklers.
I've gotta do that, if I'll bill back.
You're looking at
My
proper
actual
lighting
insurance
inside
company's gonna pay for
buildings.
that upgrade.
You're looking if they have to have fire pumps that they've got to put them in. You're looking at exit signs, you're looking
You're
at,
talking.
you're looking at firewalls.
Industrial,
I'm talking about,
UCO only, new construction going forward. The day you adopt, everything behind it
that
is
day
grandfathered.
forward, that day forward.
That's history.
the only way,
But I can see that.
the only way a previous building, like City Hall here, if you spend 50% or more, it's gotta be totally brought up to code, remodel.
The value, the current assessed value.
Yeah, if it's 50% more, then it has to come up to meet state code.
And here's, I think this is kind of where maybe where Bud was headed somewhat earlier. Let's just say you got an industry that buys 50 acres of land in the, I'm sure this works fire protection jurisdiction, whatever your radius is called, not city limits, but protection jurisdiction. If I go buy 50 acres, that person buys 50 acres and gonna build a industry there. And by this code, it says we gotta have this water flow, this water infrastructure. It comes back, it's gonna cost the water more than $1 million to do it, to make it right. And we know good and well, that can't happen. The city can't fund it, so guess what? Where am I going, Winfield, Hamilton, Russell? You know, that's the problem I see on setting this guideline, you're handcuffing something to you.
Why?
Jonathan?
Why not?
Usually, people building new subdivisions, building industrial parks, pays themselves to put the water lines in,
Sure,
and the hydrants.
sure.
But that's not gonna be very favorable for somebody wanting to come in here and put a business in and put an
So
industry.
we're forcing them to do that out of pocket, or we're forcing the city or water.
And we're forcing them on occasion to have to go back and put in an 8 or 10 inch line.
We did that at Excel, didn't we? Did we put a big water line
We
in?
done an
over
extension
Excel?
out there.
We
Yeah,
did an extension.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
again, it took us 5 years to get the money.
Yeah, I know,
to do
but I'm
it.
saying though, so you're
You know, I mean,
familiar
I'm not being
with what it
facetious, I'm
takes
just-
to,
You know, this,
bring a big place up to
But
par.
that building should have never been built that big without the fire protection act. See what I'm saying?
Well, again, they drew a fine line there and said those hoses that they had in each section of the building sufficed for their fire protection. We didn't agree with it, but that was what they got by on. But again, the city approved it. Now, that's the problem you have is, you know, if we're gonna enforce this, we gotta enforce it for everybody. That's the reason we're so intent on making sure what we do is right. And the other thing is, if we can't enforce it, then it's not what the paper's written on.
But this right here is just fire prevention.
I
The
understand.
building is in the building codes. That's what the fire marshal's going for. If If you don't wanna put a fire hydrant every 1,000 foot, you ain't got to. It's just gonna hurt you when the ice open, okay?
How much?
I don't know.
But we open ourselves up for a lawsuit.
Water is 60% of the,
I mean, I'm sure there's
In
a
all
company that
honesty.
will ISO consultant. Will come in here and evaluate you like ISO, will tell you, hey, if you adopt a fire prevention ordinance, your ISO will gain a point.
We're talking about two different things.
ISO will come to you.
We're talking
What?
about a
ISO
fire
comes
prevention
to it.
ordinance, and we're also talking about a code.
the code.
There's two different
Yeah, they're two.
things
That's
going
what
on.
I'm saying.
The fire prevention, what y'all were talking about as far as the fire lanes, the open burns and all that kind of stuff, I mean, in your point of they have to come get a burn permit, and then there's a fine levy,
If we
and
require them 3 days before, come and get a burn permit, are we gonna be able to monitor?
All you gotta do is say, call the day of the permit. I mean, the
But now
burn.
this ordinance says 3 days prior.
This
It's
is
an
just an
example.
ordinance, y'all
This is-
got
this
it.
is a sample, this
Ain't
is
gonna
the
be-
That's what I'm saying.
Why do we gotta have to?
See, the ordinance that'll be, that y'all want, if y'all want to establish an ordinance for that, it'll be the way that y'all choose to do
Okay,
it.
let's do this, let's take these, go through them, highlight them like you did, come up with a series of questions we need to ask, and go ahead and get that resolved, so when we do get the fire marshal up here at the next meeting, we'll do the same thing, we'll have some fall work session on, let him tell us the if, ands, or buts, and we'll go from there.
If this is a sample, ordinance, well, why couldn't, Jeff and Tommy, I mean, we don't have to do this 15 pages.
The city Denver's done changed some of it. He had
What I'm trying to
500.
say is we could do a 4 or 5 page thing, just cover the basics on it. We don't have to encompass
Yeah,
everything that's
you
in
have
it.
the ability to write the ordinance.
That's what I'm trying, well,
Yeah,
what
we
I'm saying is,
understand that.
why don't you just do 8 or 10 points in this thing rather than us trying to adopt, I mean, this is like you said, somebody else's anyway, it's not ours. You know,
It's, well, again, it's been
what's-
reworded slightly.
well, again, those, still, it is not in a legal form, it's just something somebody wrote. So why don't we take
If
what,
there's no burn ordinance out, that's fine. How you gonna tell a property owner he can't burn something in his own property? You gotta call city hall and ask for permission.
You don't, all you gotta do is call Sam, we'll
Let
take
me
control.
put,
of it.
let
I
me put it this
guarantee
way,
you, if you
for
do
5
somebody
years,
back in the-
for
back in
5
the
years,
middle,
I worked in the
you
city
win.
of Sheffield. Alright, 5 years I worked in the city of Sheffield. They had an absolute no burn order 365 days a year, period, no questions asked. If you burnt something, we went up there, you were told to put it out. If you didn't put it out, we put it out for you to where you can't read it, where you couldn't rely on it. Now, this is a solid full-time department, don't get me wrong. They don't have volunteers or paid-on-call people. But they passed a citywide no burn ordinance at all,
Standing, there's no burn.
standing. There was no questions asked. That's the way it was.
They're right there at,
Can you tell somebody they can't burn something on their own property? Absolutely, you can.
But why would you want to?
That's
Just because you can? I mean, that's my point.
And they're not saying that they wanna make it so that you can't burn on your own property. But you know what? If they get a call and they get dispatched, you're gonna be paying a bunch of firefighters $16.50 or whatever it is per call for no reason, because you already know somebody's burning.
And it happens in the fall, when everybody's burning leaves, it's 2 and 3 times a week.
What-
We've been out, I don't know how many that.
But a simple phone call, I mean, if you put that in the ordinance and say a simple phone call is all it requires, if you don't, and our fire department gets called to it, you get a fine. I mean, that covers you.